right out of the gate. The very first question in last night's CBS News vice presidential debate centered on the Mideast tensions. Moderators asked Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Ohio Senator J.D. Vance if they would support a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran. Let's bring in our debate panel to break down the answers to that and more of the substance of the VP debate. Joining us now, former Assistant Treasury Secretary to President Trump, Monica Crowley, and Democratic strategist Richard Goodstein. Well, they came out swinging, and none of these sort of, how do you feel about this, that? They came out and immediately asked that Israel question. Monica, it felt like J.D. Vance was very focused on it. He had his comment, then we'll get to what we saw with Walz. But tell me how you think his response.
Yeah, well, it was clear that that was going to be the initial question in the debate because of the big breaking news that Iran, in order to save face, because Israel took preemptive action to decapitate, they've decapitated not only the Hamas leadership, but now also the Hezbollah leadership. So there was a flurry of rockets coming into Israel. So obviously that was going to be the initial question. J.D. answered it pitch perfect, which is that Israel needs to do what Israel needs to do for its own security. Biden and Harris have not abandoned Israel, but put enormous pressure on the state of Israel to negotiate a ceasefire, to try to broker some sort of stoppage of the hostilities. Benjamin Netanyahu has resisted that pressure, and J.D. Vance was very articulate in saying the United States needs to back our most key ally in the region and give them a free hand to do what they need to do for their own security.
Richard, why don't you paraphrase what Governor Walz said? And one of the things that he did point out, which was, well, how dependable is Donald Trump when he turned from allies like Ukraine to Putin during that conflict?
Well, we saw when he was president at a G7 meeting, all the G7 leaders laughing at him behind his back. We kind of know what standing he has with them, which is not very high. And Biden, in contrast, whether it's Ukraine, Israel, has been able to bring them together. We saw that with the Iranian attack several months ago, and we saw it just the other day. So I actually think what Walz was trying to say is, yes, my running mate has been shoulder to shoulder with somebody who has been absolutely providing Israel with everything they need. And we saw the consequences of it, which is very little got through.
Okay, let's move on to the business aspect of all of this, money and the economy. Tariffs came up, although neither of them wanted to use the word tariff. Let's listen to both what Walz and J.D. Vance said. We'll start with Walz because he started off by at least tackling Donald Trump's plan to impose new tariffs. Listen.
He gave the tax cuts that predominantly went to the top class. What happened there was an $8 trillion increase in the national debt, the largest ever. Now he's proposing a 20% consumption or sales tax on everything we bring in. Everyone agrees, including businesses, it would be destabilizing it, it would increase inflation and potentially lead to a recession.
But the one thing that Joe Biden did is he continued some of the Trump tariffs that protected American manufacturing jobs. And it's the one issue, the most pro-worker part of the Biden administration, unless our country stands up for itself and says, you're not accessing our markets unless you're paying middle-class Americans a fair wage.
Richard, it's true. Joe Biden kept those tariffs in place. He didn't move them out.
Some of them. Look,
Most of them.
What Donald Trump is talking about is 10% across the board, everything coming in from abroad, 60% on China. Good luck, Walmart shopper. He was worried about inflation. Guess what else is going to be inflationary? Mass deportations. For those 10 million people now out of the country, tell the people in the agriculture sector, tell the people in the residential construction sector, tell people in the hospitality sector what that's going to mean to them. And when he reduces taxes to his friends, his billionaire friends, what's that going to do to the deficit and debt and interest rates?
Monica?
Well, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have retained the vast majority of Trump's tariffs because, in fact, they work. President Trump believes in them. They were successful for 4 years in a couple of things, and they were not inflationary during the 4 years that President Trump had them in place. The inflation we're experiencing now is not related to the tariffs. They brought the Chinese to the table. The tariffs are an extremely important instrument to bring our trading partners who are taking advantage of the United States, primarily the Chinese, but there are others as well, bringing them to the negotiating table so that President Trump can negotiate fairer trade deals for America's workers. And you know what, Liz? He delivered in the first term to the tune of nearly nearly 500,000 new manufacturing jobs being brought to the United States and beginning to onshore American industries back to America so we can have Made in America very proudly once again.
I'll tell you what's made in America now. We are the largest producer of energy. We are pumping oil, we are pumping gas. In fact, gas prices, gasoline prices, and this is often called the October surprise in past presidential elections, where gas prices either fall or rise, and it does affect people's pocketbooks and the way they vote. They've been falling. Today, the national average, $3.19 a gallon. A year ago, it was $3.81. You look at what Donald Trump is saying, Monica, and he's saying, we're going to unleash, we're going to drill. A lot's been unleashed, and these prices are going down. How do you counter
he has
that?
said on day one, part of his agenda for the first day is drill, baby, drill. And he's going to unleash our great energy sector that under Biden-Harris has had tremendous restraints put on them, including drilling on federal lands. Donald Trump said, I'm going to release all of the restrictions. We're going to drill the way we did last time. When he left office, gas was about $2 a gallon. So that number that you just put up, those gas prices might be coming down, but they're coming down from a very high peak. We're also going into fall and winter. Home heating oil, heating your home is going to be much more expensive as it has been over the last 3.5 years.
3 quick points. First, we know why gas was that low because no one was going anywhere thanks to the way he mishandled COVID. Second, we had the highest production of oil and gas in the United States that the world has ever seen of any country ever last year. You can't do much better than that. And finally, regarding tariffs, you know who disagrees? Goldman Sachs, Moody's, Wharton. They think his plan will be very contractionary, and they think Harris's plan is something that will actually boost the economy. So they're not shills for Democrats. They're calling it like they see it.
Well, why can the Walz campaign and in the Harris campaign figure out an easier answer when they are asked about high prices? Now, inflation has absolutely come down from 40-year highs, but Richard, it's still at 2.5%, and in some pockets like shelter, it's even higher. And it always seems to be like they're surprised when they are asked this question.
So they do have an answer. One, they said they're actually tackling things like prescription drug prices, right? We have $35 insulin that used to be hundreds when Trump was president. She's talking about going after price gouging. Not an illegitimate thing, something that actually resonates. And again, the contrast is all these different proposals that Trump is putting out there will be highly inflationary, not just the tariffs, not just the mass deportation, but basically having the independence of the Fed taken away. All these different steps are going to be highly inflationary.
Look, the inflation that the American people have been crushed under for the last nearly 4 years is a direct result of the Biden, Harris, and the Democrats' out-of-control spending agenda. When Donald Trump handed off this economy to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in January of 2021, inflation was at 1.4%. That was coming off the unprecedented global lockdowns of COVID. He handed it off with little to no inflation, which is what we experienced throughout 4 years of Donald Trump, really a Goldilocks economy of robust economic growth, unprecedented employment, where unemployment levels were at or near historic lows for every demographic group, and little to no inflation. And what the Democrats and Kamala Harris was the tie-breaking vote for two massive multi-trillion-dollar spending bills. As soon as Joe Biden signed the first one, the Inflation Reduction Act, inflation began to take off.
They're both guilty of a lot of spending. In fact, in January, the Committee for Responsible Budget Responsible Budget came out. Again, this was January, so the numbers are slightly outdated, but they showed that the national debt under Donald Trump, with COVID spending without, so we wanted to be fair here and show both. With COVID spending, $8.4 trillion. Without COVID spending, when you take that out, $4.3 trillion. Under Biden, $4.3 trillion with COVID spending. And then when you exclude that, $2.2 trillion. Listen, Biden may look better here, but both look out of control, and neither tackled the deficit. They just didn't. In fact, the word deficit did not come up. Maybe that's on, the moderators. I don't know.
Or the national debt didn't come up last night either, which makes me want to pull my hair out because we are heading toward a major debt crisis. But, the thing about it is government has no profit motive. Unlike private businesses or publicly held companies, right? There's no profit motive. What drives government is power. And you know what feeds power? Money. So there's no incentive to rein in government or spending on either side.
I will give both Walz and J.D. Vance this. They spoke to each other. instead of yelling. And I want to read something that I got from my daughter. She said she watched it. She's 22. And she said, they were responding to each other in a nice way and acknowledging and nodding at what the other person was saying. I feel that that was the first time where I realized that while politics is often black and white, there are overlaps between the two parties that are just common, simple, humane things to feel, and they respected each other. That's something that almost gave me hope. Almost gave me hope, and I hope that this is a model debate, at least the way those gentlemen handled themselves.
I think Tim Walz showed great restraint, not going after all the misstatements, advances on health care, on abortion, on guns, on climate. There was a lot of low-hanging fruit, and he just let it go. Again, I don't know whether that was something by design or whether it's just his manner, and maybe one of the things that Kamala Harris liked about him.
All right, we started with the Republican. We end with the Democrat. Will you both come back before the election?
Anytime.
And after.
You bet.
Thank